Alright, so last video we did the curves. And so what we need to do is figure out how we're going to do the tentacles, and not only that, but how we're going to properly position them. Because, as I said, these curves, the bottom of these curves should be touching the ground, and they are not, as you can see. Alright, so let's start with this curve first, and as you can see the pivot is in the center. It's in the center for all of the curves, and what we can do is select all the curves and then just hit center pivot. So now the pivot is in the center of each curve. So let's take a look at this curve, and you've got to ask yourself, is this the position you want it to be in? Because as you can see, it's directly in the side view. Now at the minute, if we take a look at the side view of this character, it's pretty, it's not very good. And I don't like my characters to be just like flat from any one angle. And so this is something that we're going to deal with afterwards. You know, for example, like, you know, I don't want the body just to be straight down, and the stalks as well. I want them to be, you know, a bit more interesting. I'll just give you a quick example now. Like, you know, we can bend them back a little bit, you know, stuff like that. You know, that just looks way more natural. And same with the body as well. You know, we can let's have a look. Boom, boom, boom. There we go, something like that. So, you know, we're going to like curve it and stuff like that, as you can see. Alright, so this is all stuff we're going to do later. Okay, so let's take a look at this curve. And so in the minute it's just kind of like floating in the air. And so what we can do is just grab these CVs, or just one, and with the soft select still on, so if you hit B it's switched off, switch B again it's switched on, and we can just bring it down and make sure it's kind of more or less touching the ground. So now it's completely off from the actual image, but that's fine. And yeah, you know, that's looking a bit better, to be honest with you. So this is the ground here, as you can see. So maybe we can just pull it down. There we go. All right. So that's that done, and we can test it out. And what we can do is, for now, is just get rid of these other curves. So Control H just to hide them. And so we can focus just on this curve itself. Right, so cylinder, we don't want it to be 20, let's take a look, maybe 12, even 12 might be a bit too much, to be honest with you. Let's have a look, 10 maybe, 10 could be fine. Excuse me. Alright, so Control D to duplicate it, so we can use the cylinder for the other curves. And so let's just put this into position. DV middle mouse. I'm going to hit B to switch off soft select. DV middle mouse. Boom. So the pivot is at the bottom of the cylinder, and then C middle mouse, and we can scoot the cylinder all the way up along the curve. Boom. There we go. Alrighty then. So let's go into isolation mode. And so what we need to do is select these bottom faces, hold down Control to deselect the other faces, and then Shift click this curve here and hit extrude. And this is what we have so far. And so if we add the divisions, this is what happens. Now it's a bit crazy at the minute, and the reason for that is the location of the CVs. So as you can see, we've got one here, the first one, and the next one is down here, and the third one is all the way down here. So you can see these big gaps between the CVs, and then the gaps here get shorter. Well, what we can do is this. We can select the curve, and in the attribute editor it tells us that there are 15 spans, and so, you know, these CVs are also known as spans, so there's 15 of them. And so what we can do is redistribute these CVs so they are evenly spaced out across the curve. And so we have 15, and now if we go to curves, we can have rebuild. Open the little box here. So number of spans 12. So we can put 15 back in, but also you can put in any. So if you feel like you want more than 15, you can type in 20, or less than 15, 16 or whatever. So if you type in 15 and then hit rebuild. Now it changed shape just a little bit. However, when you go into control vertex now, you can see that these are evenly spaced out. And if you want to, you can just kind of play around the positioning a bit more. Let me just bring that a little bit around here. And so this is what we have. So now let's try it. So we need these bottom faces, and I went into face mode. As you can see, I'm in object mode, right click face, and Maya remembers your last selection, so that's pretty cool. So we didn't have to select these faces again, they're already selected. Hold down shift, let's select the curve, and let's hit the extrude now. And now let's do the divisions, and as you can see, it's a little bit better now as we create the divisions. And you know, you can go crazy. It stops at 25. However, you can type in more if you want to, like 50. Obviously we don't need 50, so maybe 12. It's a bit crazy there, we need to fix that basically. But let's have a look. I don't like to begin with too much resolution to begin with. I like to add resolution as we go along. Let's go with 10 and then add resolution. So what else can we do? Well, we need to go back into that tool basically and just click on this, and there we go. And so that allows us to bring up the, where are we, poly extrude face. Click on it, and we want to go back to taper, and then there we go, make it thinner, very thin. There we go. So it begins thick and ends up thin. And let's just do a delete history. Now, as you can see, this is a big problem that we need to deal with. Let's deal with the easy stuff first. Let's get rid of these top faces here. And so let's take a look. Let's hit 3, and what do we have? And it looks fairly smooth. You know, it doesn't look too bad until it gets to here, and it just goes all crazy. And the reason for that is a lack of resolution. So again, double click on the multi-cut tool and switch on edge flow, and let's just add some geometry that kind of respects the flow there. There we go. So it's not so blocky. There we go. That looks much better. Alright, so obviously we need more resolution here. Look at that, it's very crazy. And so before we add too much resolution, we need to actually like figure out this mess. And so let's go into vertex mode, and obviously look at it, it's just, yeah, it's just totally crazy. Right, what we can do is boom 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 boom, get rid of the tip for now. We don't need these and what we can do actually is now, let's have a look. Multi-cut tool, yep, edge flow switched on, and boom. It's kind of making it a bit better, as you can see, but it's still a little bit messed up. And so what we can do is just delete the geometry and do it by hand from this point onwards. So I've double clicked on this edge loop here. I'm going to close this window here and then hit extrude, and we can just by hand just follow the path basically. So from this point here we can just spin it round, oops, like here, this axis, hit extrude again, bring it round, spin it round, hit extrude again, and just basically do a bit of modeling. Bring it like that, spin it round, and boom, extrude, and bring it down and spin it round. And so the next thing we need to do is obviously just shrink it. So and just basically do a bit of old school modelling. And if you take a look how much better that looks now. Alright, still not perfect, so grab this multi-cut, make sure edge flow is switched on, and let's just make this curvature a bit better. And we have, and look how much better it looks. And then the next thing to do, let's delete history, Control F save your scene, is we can actually go into edge mode, grab these edge loops and do an edit edge flow. There we go. Yeah, it's looking better. And just go all the way across. There we go. And there you have it. Control S save your scene. Let's hit 3 and look how much better that looks now. And as you can see, it's still a bit up from the ground by quite a bit. And so grab these vertices, not these two here, hit B, and with soft select on, let's make it a bit wider and make the influence much wider. There we go. And then just bring it down to make sure it's touching the ground. There you go. It is touching the ground. And there you have it. Excuse me. We don't need the curve now. And the other thing we need to do is, let's take a look. It should be fine. I mean, we stretched it a little bit, so it makes it a bit wonky here. So what we can do, switch off soft select. So from this point on here, we can do a bit more edit edge flow. There we go. And just to pop this part of the tentacle into shape. There we go. And so that looks much better now. Same here as well. There you have it, hit 3. Alright, this is looking pretty good. And so we've got this last bit to deal with. Delete history, and let's just grab this. So what can we do with this? How do we deal with this? Well, excuse me, we can either like grab the entire edge loop and do an extrusion and just basically close it like that, or you can just grab just one edge, go to mesh and just do fill hole. There you go. And what we need to do, the problem with fill hole, it doesn't include the geometry, so you have to kind of do it by hand. So I like this method, double click, so you've got the entire edge loop, hit extrude and just scale it in so you've got the geometry that accompanies it. And then what you can do is go to mesh and fill hole and then just add the geometry in. So grab the multi-cut tool. Now let's double click it. We don't need edge flow in this instance, so switch it off and then just connect the edges. There we go. And so these are all four-sided. Let's add a bit more resolution and maybe here as well. And so the aim here is to make this a bit rounded, and so what we can do is grab these two vertices here, hit B for soft select. Now we want to shrink the influence a little bit. Come on, there we go. Now you have to be careful when you're doing soft select, because if you do it too big, you see, you're moving too much of the geometry. So we want to move just a little bit of it. And as we move a little bit of it, as you can see, it starts creating a rounded edge. Alright, we're getting there. And another thing is you've got to make sure that you're happy with the direction. So if you take a look at the curve as it's coming around, it's starting to go inwards. So it's coming inwards on itself towards a tentacle, whereas the pivot is going straight down. So you just want to be careful. So instead of just going straight down, you might want to like move it inwards as well at the same time, or do it afterwards. So if you take a look, you know, you might want to move it in like that. Now the problem with this is by the time it starts getting curved, it's touching itself. And I know touching itself sounds a bit weird. I don't mean it in that way, but the point is we want it to be rounded. So one thing at a time. So we, excuse me. So we've achieved this where it's kind of a bit rounded, and then what we can do is once it's rounded, switch off soft select, and then grab all these vertices that affect the tip of this tentacle. Obviously we need to deselect these vertices, and we can just push them back up, and by pushing them back up, the rounded tip still remains. And so we can just kind of like maybe bring it to about here, bring that to about there. And so let's hit 3, and this is what we've got. So we've got a little tip. Now it's a bit wonky at the minute, so we need our trusty edit edge flow. Boom. Just straighten it all out. There we go. Now let's hit 3. There we go. That's much better. There we go. And we have done. I'm thinking that this is still a bit too thick here as it comes round here, as you can see. So if you want to just change it, hit B, soft select, just kind of bring it in a little bit. Let's just make the influence a bit bigger. You know, so just kind of, there we go, just make it a bit thinner around here. There you go, that's better. So let's hit 3. Not bad. Again, you know, always creates a bit of wonkiness, and so again, grab the edge loop, hit B to get rid of the soft select, and the trusty edit edge flow. Boom. There we go. And I guess we're gonna have to go all the way around here. There we go. I'll say that's fine. There you have it. And tons and tons of history. Boom. Control S, save your scene. Let's get out of isolation mode. And for now, we have done the first tentacle. Remember, I want to reposition this. It's not going to be just, you know, the side here. It's going to be kind of like at an angle, which is way more interesting, or the back here, you know. So that is something we're going to play around with later. And shift control H, let's bring the other curves back. And so next video we need to deal with this next curve. So I will see you next video.